2 style studies in 1 month? I'm as shocked as you are. Quick disclaimer, I've noticed recently that some comments on my videos pop up in my notifications, but when I go looking for them on the actual video, they are nowhere to be found. I'm not deleting them. Either the commenters are deleting it themselves, or it is YouTube's algorithm community guidelines thing. Or it's my PR team, whom I pay a lot of money to keep it clean in the comments. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly let you guys know that I am not deleting any comments, good or bad, from the comment section below. Apart from the ones that are obviously spam with malicious links, because I know my grandma watches these videos and I really don't want her to download any viruses. Like, I really don't. So those are the only ones I delete. Okay. So welcome back to yet another style study. If you're new to this series, hi, welcome, glad to have you here. This is a series where we look at some of our favorite contemporary artists and look at their style and see what we can learn from it so we can apply it to our own art. Keyword, learn. And today's video was another request by one of my lovely viewers, Fairy Fox. Today we're going to cover an artist who has recently blown up on Instagram and now YouTube, Sam Yang, who is better known by his Instagram name, SAMDOESARTS. As with every other style study video, today's video is going to be in 3 parts. In part 1, we will analyze the style of Sam and see what we can learn from it. Part 2 is going to be a study of one of Sam's original paintings. The reference I chose was this one. And in part 3, we're going to apply everything that we've learned to an original painting of our own. As always, if you enjoyed this video and find it helpful, then please remember to give me a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below because I make new videos every single week. And now, grab a drink, grab a snack, sit back, because let's face it, this is going to be a long one, probably. But let's dive into another style study featuring a SAMDOESARTS. Sam Yang is a 22-year-old digital illustrator from Toronto, Canada. If you've been around the Instagram art community in the last couple of months, I'm very sure you've come across his work before. His stylized portraits and beautifully lit illustrations have brought him over 186,000 followers on Instagram alone and over 22,000 subscribers on YouTube. I should also mention that when I first began researching for this video 2 days before writing the script, his Insta had about 174,000 followers, meaning in literally 2 days, he has gained 12,000 new followers. What? Honestly, teach us your ways. Although Sam hasn't shared too many personal posts on his social media, he does have his face on a video over on his YouTube channel, as in his identity isn't some crazy secret. But all we do know is he uses a Cintiq and Photoshop for his work. Although his older work was rather realistic and what I would call classic portraits, he really blew up when he started putting out more stylized work. Today we're only going to focus on said stylized work because it is very unique and there is much to learn from it. So now let us put on our Santa hats because it is time to make a list. Sam's stylized work pretty much exclusively involves female characters that are very distinctly recognizable even from tiny thumbnails. So let's have a look at 4 key characteristics that make these illustrations so uniquely identifiable. Sam paints his characters to be incredibly appealing, but in a very unrealistic way. The proportions of the face are very exaggerated in all the right places and minimized in all the other right places, creating a very cutesy, traditionally appealing bone structure. On the last style study, we did the skull drawing experiment, and I found that this helps us understand the proportions better than anything else. Here is a regular human face. If I turn the opacity down and draw a skull over it, these are the proportions we get. Here, on the other hand, is one of Sam's characters. If I try to draw a skull over this face, here are the obvious differences you notice. First, of course, the eye sockets are incredibly large in proportion to all of the other features, and they are quite far apart. The nose is minimized and often has no significant nose bridge. The lips, while not super minimized, are definitely not overtly plump. The jaw is very narrow and generally tapers to quite a sharp chin. In fact, when you look closely enough, you'll notice that these proportions are rather familiar. But here is something else I noticed. Although the eye sockets are massive, only about half of the socket is the actual eye itself. What I mean to say is that there is a lot of eyelid space between the lashes and the eyebrows. So while the eye sockets are still way larger than realistically possible, the eyes don't look outrageous because in comparison to the size of the socket, the eye itself is rather small. The nose is rendered to be cute, button-like and upturned. Like we've seen in the work of Ross Tran in the past, the nose is minimized with little to no nose bridge in order to create a very youthful appearance. The other thing I noticed is that Sam paints what I like to call Barbie lips. The Cupid's bow is very soft, but the overall shape of the mouth is almost reminiscent of how we drew eyes as children. The upper lip is generally fuller than the lower lip, but is shaded darker than the lower lip to create the effect of it being in shadow. But the overarching theme you'll notice in Sam's work is that there are very few rounded edges. You see, while soft rounded edges are generally used to enhance the cutesy youthful look, a lot of Sam's art actually has very sharp angles. You'll see this in the hair, the clothes, the jaw, and even in the curves of the body at times. As we've seen in the Ceratopus style study, these sharp angles add a ton of dynamism and movement, and that is what keeps Sam's art from being typecast as yet another cartoon or stylized artist. His work is actually an excellent study in shape language. The other strong aspect of Sam's work is the type of lighting that he uses. More often than not, you'll find that Sam loves to paint strong sunlight. His characters are usually bathed in the cool glow of natural light, with a strong warm key light creating dramatic highlights. It generally feels like either broad daylight or golden hour. But how can you tell the difference between these two lighting setups? It's all in the ambient light. You see, when you're in broad daylight, a lot of the ambience comes from the blue sky. So when you're painting this, you want to keep your midtones or base color fairly cool toned. And now when you add the direct highlight from the warm sun, you pick a very pale orangey yellow and paint in the hard lights. With daylight, we can show the difference between light and shadow through a difference in the hue, warm lights and cool shadows. But if we're painting golden hour, it's a little different, because this time we don't really have that bright blue sky. This time we're gonna have to keep the shadows fairly warm as well, meaning that the only way to show contrast between light and shadow is through value and saturation, not the hue variation. In other words, both the light and shadow are warm, it's just about making the shadows appear darker and less saturated. These are the two main lighting scenarios you'll see in Sam's work, and honestly it was shocking to me how simple the concept was to grasp. Obviously there are loads of intricacies in his work, and the exact placement of highlights and shadows is literally genius, but the underlying concept itself is easier to grasp than you think. Also, quick side note, unlike most semi-realistic artists, Sam does actually use shadows on the face and the skin where necessary, but there aren't super crazy value shifts. That is, the shadows aren't like 12 shades darker than the midtones. Just wanted to mention that real quick. Sam generally paints backgrounds that you would likely see in the world around you. Be it interior or exterior scenes, there aren't too many crazy elements that would give you psychedelic vibes. At their simplest, Sam's characters are put in front of a neutral grey background with subtle gradients here and there. At their most complex, he'll render entire scenes with skies and clouds and oceans. The more complex pieces are either set in very natural environments, but you do have the usual cityscape and buildings at times. But in either case, these backgrounds have a very hand-drawn, illustrative look and aren't hyper-realistic by any means. In other words, the background is rendered to the same quality and with the same stylistic choices as the characters are. The characters genuinely look like they belong in the backgrounds. Now this, my dudes, is the real key to Sam Yang's art. It is to simplify the extreme values. Here's what I mean. When you look at the midtones and the shadows, particularly in the skin, you'll notice that things are very smoothly rendered with fairly realistic dimension. But if you look at the brightest highlights, you'll start to notice that they are almost completely flat. Like here, when you look at the area around her nose, it's just a flat white. The only way you can tell any form at all is through the shape of the flat white. Hell, look at even the fox. The bright highlight on its head is literally just a flat white, but the reason that you can tell that his head is still fluffy is because of the shape of the flat white. Here, her hair and jumper have a flat highlight as well, but you can tell the texture simply because of the shapes that he has used. The highlight itself has no value shift, but you can tell the form from the shape language. I told you, this guy is a genius with shapes. In fact, this simplification of the brightest highlight actually serves to push the contrast without having to go super dark with the shadows. You see, although the rest of the face is rendered in pretty much low contrast midtones, we still feel like it is all in the shadow. Why? Because our eyes tend to take the brightest spot as the 0 point. So anything darker than that is automatically perceived as being in the shadow. So when you have such a large, powerful highlight, you can pretty much get away with having minimum value shifts in the rest of the piece, without having to paint things super dark and having the little details getting lost in there. In conclusion, Sam Yang is a literal wizard with an understanding of light and shadow unlike any other artist I've come across. That's it. That's the tweet. So to sum up, Sam's work is characterized by these 4 points. The proportions are rather stylized with large eye sockets and a minimized nose, Barbie lips and a narrow chin. The lighting plays a crucial role in Sam's work, and he either paints broad daylight or golden hour light. Number 3, the backgrounds range from very simple to very complex, but are given the same stylistic treatment as the characters. And number 4, the key to Sam's art lies in the simplification of the largest highlights. For this part of the video, I picked a reference that exemplifies all the 4 points in part 1. Also, I realized that I don't paint many golden hour portraits, so this would be a nice change of pace. You'll notice through this painting that I struggled a lot with getting the shape of the nose right. This is mostly a me thing. I'm used to painting more realistic noses, so this stylistic upturned sharp nose had me stumped for entirely too long. But as you know, we love a challenge on this channel. But the one technique I realized quite early on in the process is the blend and carve method, which I found helps to really achieve those subtle hard edges. You first paint the shadowy regions with a softer brush and blend it properly. Then you go in with a flat, hard-edged brush and you carve in the lighter tones. You'll see me do this with both the eyes as well as the entire side of her face that is in direct sunlight. Another thing I noticed is that the neck is long and thin, and this is something I now see in all of his work looking back, which creates a very graceful impression. So here's the finished study, which I think came out pretty close to the original. So for the original painting, I actually used a random character generator because your girl was out of ideas. I wanted something that was super unique, but I didn't want the story to overpower the style here. So I went with this character brief of a defiant 19-year-old who wears woolen clothes and has a pet parrot that she carries in her pocket at all times. Honestly, I kind of want to give her a whole story because I really love how she turned out, but as always, this painting is available to my patrons along with some other cool exclusive rewards, so make sure you check out my page, link is in the description, and tiers start at just $1 a month. It helps the channel out a lot and you get to collect some awesome art for yourself. So here's the finished original painting for today. And there you have it, SAMDOESARTS Demystified. This felt like the perfect way to close off September on my channel, which has mostly just been all art videos, so this one just fit right in. If you've enjoyed this video and found it helpful, then please remember to give me a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much again to Fairy Fox for requesting this video. This was so much fun to put together, as are all my style study videos, honestly. So if you guys have any other artists you would like to see on this series, then put them in the comments below and I will check them out and add it to my ever-growing list of style studies to do in this series. If you haven't watched the other style study videos yet, I will put a playlist up here. I highly recommend every single one of them because there is so much to learn and they're all so entertaining and I'm so proud of them. So go watch them, you will enjoy every one of them, I promise. Alright, but with all of that said, I thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!